Well, hello everyone, this is Mr. Vanderpool, and today we're going to be starting with our AP Government material, and we're going to be talking about some of the constitutional underpinnings of the United States government. Now, these notes are going to be taken very similarly to how you take the AP Macroeconomics notes. You're going to go ahead and listen to the video, and if you've printed out the PowerPoint, you can go ahead and take down information about each slide, or you can go ahead and just take down the notes by hand. So, remember also, ladies and gentlemen, that we're going to be checking these tomorrow. I will go ahead and stamp them so you can get credit for that. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and move on to our material here. We're talking about government. We're talking about politics. So I want you to start off with the word association. What words come to mind when you hear the word politics? Think about that for a moment. Maybe jot down a couple of words for me. Does that word to you have more of a positive or a negative connotation? Some people see politics in a very positive light, and some see it in more of a negative light. In fact, if you look at TV shows, you could see this. For example, several years ago, there was a political show called The West Wing, where Martin Sheen is the president, and they look at politics in a much more positive light than House of Cards, which is a relatively recent show starring Kevin Spacey. That show takes a look at politics in a little bit more of a negative light. Now, I want to throw in a gentleman here you may very well need to know. His name is Machiavelli. Now, Machiavelli's name is synonymous with tough, dirty politics. He's the author of The Prince, and he's one of history's first political scientists. And political scientists, they study how people establish and run states. And much of what we're going to be doing over the course of this semester is going to be the kind of stuff that political scientists do on a daily basis. Now, what are some quotes by Machiavelli? The ends justify the means. It is better to be feared than loved. By no means can a prudent ruler keep his word, because all men are bad and do not keep promises to you. You likewise do not have to keep your promises to them. So, as you can see, this is definitely associated with dirty, get mine, zero-sum politics. Now, some people have a little bit more neutral view of politics. For example here, Harold Laswell. He's a leading political scientist, and he looks at politics as who gets what, when, and how. And he sees that we're all political. We're just not used to calling it that. You don't have to take a class to get politics. Aristotle, the famous Greek philosopher, was correct when he wrote, "Man is by nature a political animal." We all want to influence others. Now, very important to this idea of politics and government is what's called the social contract theory. Now, a famous advocate for politics and political ideas, modern politics and political ideas, was John Locke. And John Locke is famous for the quote, "The only valid government is one based on the consent of the governed." And it was based on this idea of a social contract. So rulers and citizens enter into an agreement, also known as a social contract. Now, this idea of a social contract was actually originated by a philosopher named Thomas Hobbes, a very famous political philosopher, who argued that people were brutal and that to achieve peace, the government must set up the rules that people agree to follow. And that's the only way you can keep the peace in a state. And so John Locke especially believed in government by the people, government by the masses. And John Locke also believed that people can legitimately overthrow a government that doesn't protect people's well-being. Now, John Locke had a tremendous influence on the United States, and let me show you why. So this comes from John Locke's Of Civil Government, a state also of equality, wherein all the power and jurisdiction is reciprocal, no one having more power than another. And then in the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson writes, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal." Very closely associated. John Locke greatly influenced Thomas Jefferson, who of course is the primary author of the Declaration of Independence. All right, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about political power. Now, power is the ability of one person to cause another person to act in accordance, basically to make people do what you want them to do. Now, authority is an important concept, and that's the right to use power. So a president, for example, has authority because they have the right to use power, because they are the president. Now, a little different is the idea of legitimacy, which that's what makes the law or leader a source of right. So what actually gives the president authority? It's the Constitution, particularly Article 2 of the United States Constitution, is what makes the president, gives the president legitimate authority. Now, what makes a democracy? Some principles that are necessary for democracy to exist. Universal suffrage, everybody votes, political equality, all votes are counted equally, majority rule with minority rights, and the government responds to public opinion. Now, a topic of great debate in democracy is, can uneducated poor people be trusted to vote and to help influence government? There is a couple of types of democracy, and one of the more important types is a direct democracy, in which all citizens create and vote on laws. Now, there are some problems with this. Number one, it's impractical for reasons of time, expertise. Also, masses do not always make the best decisions. Masses of people do make unwise decisions based on emotions. Hitler, for example, was elected. And so this feeling was echoed by Alexander Hamilton when he says, "The masses are turbulent and changing and seldom judge or determine right." And it's important to understand that the Founding Fathers, when you look at the institutions of government, they created in the U.S. Constitution. Really, there was only one institution that was democratic. That was democratically elected. It was the House of Representatives. The president was chosen by electoral college. It still is, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And the Senate was chosen by state legislatures until the passage of the 17th Amendment in 1788, which created the popular election of senators. But still, direct democracy exists, for example, here in California. We vote on propositions in a directly democratic way, where we, as citizens of California, are voting directly on propositions. Also important to this is Thomas Jefferson, the idea that education is essential in a democratic society because you need to have an informed electorate in order to make good decisions for a populace, especially in a direct democracy. Now, our United States government is a representative democracy, also called a republic, where citizens elect representatives. So, we as citizens elect members of the House of Representatives and U.S. senators to represent us in government. Now, the government mediates popular views, meaning they take views of multiple institutions, multiple people, and they create a compromise. Representatives are educated on issues at hand, at least we hope they are. Now, a republic prevents fast sweeping change, especially when you look at checks and balances and separation of powers, which we're going to take a look at more in the future. And one of the key parts of a republic is that minority rights are more likely to be protected because the masses can't directly pass laws that negatively affect minorities.